Morning. Welcome again to a wonderful Thursday morning. Here we are, and today we have a fantastic guest, Pieter Scholtz, who will be talking to us about whether your business will continue to thrive if you're not there. So that's something we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into it, let's welcome our co-hosts. Mona Bauer, my wife. Morning, Mona. Mona is a successful business person here in Centurion, and she will be talking from a point of view of business with regard to Pieter. Then we got Wilhelm Lombard. He's a team performance coach, and he's going to be talking to Pieter about teams and performance and how you get your teams to perform to their best. Then we've got Billy Snyman. He's a master executive coach, and he's going to be talking about conflict and understanding how to actually get through conflict with Pieter a little bit later today. And then we've got Glenn Lees-Jones. Glenn is a performance, he's a purpose-driven coach, and he's part of Map for Life, and he gets you to actually understand why you're here, what you've got to do in your life to get where you want to go. So welcome to our co-host, but a special welcome to Pieter. Welcome, Pieter. I'm going to ask Glenn to introduce you. Over to you, Glenn.
Thanks, David, and truly an honor for me to introduce this man. Pieter is an internationally recognized business and executive coach. He's spent nearly 2 decades helping ambitious owners and leaders build, scale, and create businesses with owning. And I've actually personally known Pieter for probably just over a decade now. I don't know if that's poor him or poor me. Joking there. But he's really a man with incredible integrity, and I've just seen that his business acumen is truly phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to this. His experience includes coaching business owners, CEOs, executive teams, family businesses, and law firms, both in South Africa and the United States. And he brings board-level business experience, international coaching recognition, and practical understanding of what it takes to move from operator to shareholder, from growth to legacy, and from success to significance. So I'm really looking forward to it. I just am truly honored to have you on board, Pieter, and we look forward to hearing what you've got to say. But just back to you, David, very quickly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for a great introduction there. So we're talking to Pieter Scholtz, and he will be talking about, will your business survive without you? So welcome to the show, and welcome to Pieter. Pieter, I'm going to give the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you very much, team, and welcome everybody this morning. And Glenn, thanks for the introduction. I mean, I think that one of the first things that we're going to be discussing today is the concept of building a business that outlives you, and what it takes for us to get that right for you, etc. So part of what I want to do today is to, in actual fact, just just to add a little bit of introduction, etc., without going into too much detail. Glenn's done a great job in dealing with that, etc. But essentially, I've spent 20 years both in corporate world and not pretty much the last 20 years in the business and executive coaching space, both locally and internationally. Built a firm up of about 50 franchise partners a couple of years ago, but now working full-time in the USA as well. So, been around the block a bit and being able to discuss and apply much of the background learnings that I've got from both local and international business to this session today. So you see, when we look at a business that grows to the point, or a business that outlives you, one of the first things we see with business owners is that we get to a point where your business is growing, and that results in more clients, more employees, more revenue, more responsibility. And we think to ourselves, we've arrived. But herein comes the problem. Your business might look impressive from the outside because you're adding client base, you're adding systems, you're adding employees, or whatever the case might be, etc. But the real question we've got to ask ourselves is, what happens to you and what happens to your business when you are no longer the person driving every decision in the business? And so that is what I'm going to touch on in literally the couple of minutes we've got available this afternoon. And that's the key question we've got to address today. So a couple of things that I want to talk about is, let's first get an understanding of what a successful business is. A successful business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that buys you time and freedom. Now, when I talk about time and freedom, I'm always saying to ourselves, recognize that the business is here to serve you and to serve whatever your calling in life is. And every business owner, and I see this both locally and internationally with a lot of legal clients I work with, etc. Again, when we define success, everybody says they're working 18, 20 hours, 20-hour days. But true success comes to you when you've built a business that has bought you time in order to do that which you've been called to go and do, and freedom in order to decide how and when you want to play. Secondly, it's a commercial profitable enterprise that allows you a predefined exit strategy. One of the things I often hear about quite a lot from business owners is, Peter, I'm not ready to exit my business here. And here's the hard reality. And I've spoken to many of my clients in the estate planning industry in America. Less than 15% of people who have the estates wound up ended up leaving this planet at a time that they predetermined for that to happen. So here's the reality for us. You and I are not in complete control of our exit timing and our exit strategy. And when is the best time for you to build a business that you can exit? It starts tomorrow. It's that old analogy of, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago or tomorrow or today? And so what we've got to make sure is that we build a commercial profitable enterprise that buys you time and freedom to do that which you've been called to do, allows you to develop a predetermined exit strategy. Many times I ask business owners, have you defined your exit strategy? And 99% of business owners tell me no. In my opinion, and this probably goes against conventional thinking, before you develop the vision for your business, you develop your exit strategy. And then lastly is when we look at this, is that we have to build successful businesses that successfully transfer to the next generation. And we'll discuss generational leadership and generational thinking a little later on as well. But understand one thing is that whether you're passing your business on to family members, your kids, your daughter, your son, or whatever the case may be, or you're passing on to people that you've mentored and grown in your business to take on that which has been important to you for the business to outlast you, if you haven't built a business that can move on to the next generation, then in fact, dare I say, is that we've all been in single generational thinking and, dare I say, self-centered leadership. So we've got to ground ourselves first into this commercial profitable enterprise that buys you time and freedom, allows you a predetermined exit strategy, and successfully transfers to the next generation. So how do we in actual fact get that right? And you'll see that in the previous discussion, the previous slide I spoke about is, I made the comment that said, your business is a vehicle for you to achieve whatever it is you want in life. 90% of the people that I speak to have a clearly defined vision for their business, but don't have a clearly defined life plan. As I said, the business is there to provide you with the time and the resources to do that which God has called you to go and do. And so the business is a vehicle for you, not the destination. And yes, some of the questions we've got to ask ourselves when we define the life plan for ourselves. Are your life goals so small that only you can accomplish them? Are your goals capable of being fulfilled in your lifetime? It talks again about generational thinking. Is your vision single lifetime work? In other words, can you and only you, and in your time frame, complete the legacy or the dream or the purpose you've been established in life to achieve? And then lastly, what would your life look like if money were no object to you? And so what I challenge a lot of business owners to do is to really, truly think really hard about what it is they've been called to do as individuals. And then what I often refer to is reverse engineer the life plan back into the business. And then start asking yourself the question, how big a business do I need to build right now, given the size and the scale of the purpose to which I've been called to do? So as we get that right, assuming we get that right, there's a fundamentally big there's a fundamental big mind shift that's got to take place. And if you go back to, and I did a lot of work and studies in the USA a couple of years, etc., and a chap by the name of Dennis Peacock one day said, family and business are the cornerstone of successful societies. And don't let me go down that particular challenge today. Many times when I speak to business owners, we all want to talk about the government is going to fix this up and sort out this in the community. And my challenge to you and I today is that if you want us to fix up South Africa as a society, then the first place that you've got to do to build a legacy in South Africa is to fix your own family up. And we're dealing with a situation in the country where probably 60, 70% of children born today do not have a father registered on their birth certificate. Fact. And so what we've got to do is our contribution to fixing up the society is to work and fixing up our family first and foremost. Because that, to my mind, is that when I leave this earth, have I left behind a legacy? The first legacy I've got to think about is what have I left with my children? And how do I make sure that my character and my skills have been transferred to my children? And so what we've got to think about when we do this leadership shift is how have we moved from single lifetime thinking to multi-generational thinking? How have we moved from an internal focus to an external focus where we serve others as opposed to my needs? How have we moved from a fear-driven decision to a faith-driven decisions? How have we moved from an environment where we focused on personal comfort as opposed to building a legacy, whether it's a legacy within my family, whether it's a legacy in my community, whether it's a legacy within my country, and whether it's a global legacy? And so that's the challenge for us, that we've got to shift, etc., because it all impacts the size and scale of the business we build. So when we get back into looking at the business environment first and foremost, I want to say to business owners that one of the big things we've got to understand is what I refer to as a two hats principle. Every single one of you that are running your own businesses actually carry two hats, and sometimes 6 or 7 of them. But for today, let's just focus on the two hats. Number one, you're a shareholder in your own business. And number two, you're the CEO. The shareholder hat requires you to set growth targets, define the exit strategy, approve the business plan, and hold yourself as CEO, second hat, accountable for the execution of the plan. The CEO executes the business plan, leads the team daily, builds the systems, etc., and reports back to the shareholder. So one of the first things I do with business owners, and I've done a lot of this work even yesterday again, when we build business plans and everything. And I remember sitting in corporate many years ago at board level, we used to get a one-line email from the shareholder in the UK. This business needs to make X profit this year in order for us to speak to the shareholders, ultimately the investors, around what we're going to do. And that's the thing. And so what I say to business owners very often is in order for you as shareholder, you write yourself an email to say, as a shareholder, I want X ROI, I want X profit out of this business. Bear in mind, the reason why we take the profit and determine the profit first is if you've written the life goal, you need financial resources to be able to give impact to that which you've been called to do. And so therefore, you start the business planning process to say, here's the profit, here's the ROI this business needs to generate this year. Then the second hat goes on to the CEO. Now you have to build a plan and execute on that plan. And just as a side story, remember years ago, we got 20 of our top franchise partners to come in and sit in a virtual board meeting with us in our office here in Centurion. And we ran a virtual board meeting, and each franchise partner had to present their performance in the last 12 months of running their businesses and give a clearly defined strategy of what they've got to do for the next 12 months. And the rest of the team had the vote at the end of the day to determine whether, if we were shareholders of your firm, whether we would vote to retain you. And the question you as a shareholder have to ask yourself in your business is, have you operated as effectively as the CEO of the firm? And should you be employing yourself again for the next 12 months, or should you fire yourself as a CEO? And it fundamentally shifts the way we operate in our business. So when we go and look at how do we build this business that outlasts you, and again, I'll come back to this fundamental basic truth. Business is a function of relationships times service. Relationships with suppliers, customers, and importantly, people, employees in your business, times the service or the product that you're defining for fair value exchange. And so when we look at that, etc., the first thing you've got to do to build this engine that sets you free is you've got to make sure that you're building the systems and processes in the business. The workflows are documented, standard operating procedures are documented, because most times 90% of the stuff that we've got in building the business is sitting in our heads. And I'll give you an example about that quickly. A couple of years ago, we were working with a business here in Centurion, and unfortunately, the business owner was murdered one night. Tragic story. But nothing had been documented with the business. Nobody knew where anything else was. And it was absolute chaos to try and pass that business on successfully into the estate planning process, let alone pass it on to the next generation. You know, your business planning cycles. And then we look at building those systems and processes. But then, as I have to say in today's world, is what role do we use and allow to play with regards to AI? And how do you use AI to document the routine, to develop the workflows and automate the recurring stuff that happens every single day that doesn't take, huge amount of mental energy for you to decide on the non-recurring things going forward. And then lastly is the third column about building the business, the engine that sets you free, is that, remember, as strong as AI and documented workflows and processes and systems might be, people remain central to the process and critical that in that component of yourself and building things, have you built a team that build relationship and trust, that build the levels of accountability and ownership into the business, that in fact also make sure that the culture of the organization is set, because culture is something that transfers to the next generation as well. So one of the key things that I want you to think about is what I refer to as a 90-day test. And if I remember correctly, looking at the post on LinkedIn yesterday, somebody actually asked this question. And the question is, could your team run the business for the next 90 days without you? And again, can talk to this about for 2 to 3 hours on its own. But one of the first things we have to do, if you're not in that space yet, is what do we need to build to ensure that your team can run successfully without you? And I go one step further and say, can your business grow successfully without you? And so one of the first things we've got to do, and I find this particularly important, particularly in the professional services game, and apologies to any lawyers or engineers in the room, the people that are most difficult to coach to build and delegate authority down to the team members are lawyers and engineers. And I work with lawyers all over the USA at the moment because they think nobody can do the job as well as they can. And so what I always work with business owners to do is to say, you've got to build a weekly, monthly meeting rhythm where you step out of running those meetings and you delegate authority, not delegate the tasks. You delegate authority to a chairperson to run those meetings on your behalf and give them the opportunity to, in actual fact, make decisions within predefined scopes for them to run those meetings. Because what happens very often, and I've seen this across many industries, the moment the CEO goes and sits and travels to India for 3 months or wherever they want to go to, and they step out of the business, all meeting rhythms fall flat. And the question you've got to ask yourself is, are you the biggest constraint to growth? And in the US, we work a system where we call valuable assessments, etc. And one of the key constraints to building true enterprise value is if 80% of the decisions have to come through you the biggest constraint in the business. What we've got to do is to make sure, what you've got to do is to make sure that only the top $1,500 an hour tasks come onto your desk, where the $10 task, $100 task are delegated down with authority to people below you. And sometimes also get that meeting rhythm running within firms going forward. At the same time, as I've discussed earlier on, the concept of actually building a business that outlasts you comes back to a lot of work that I've done in this concept called generational leadership. And again, you can talk about this for 2 to 3 hours, etc. But fundamentally, generational leadership for me starts with leadership of yourself. I cannot lead my family if I haven't got to understand what my growth and what my capability and what my skill and what my character skills are like for me to pass on to my family. I cannot lead my business until I actually understand, do I have the skills, the character, the attributes, etc., and the vision for me to pass on to my business. But then thirdly, as I often always make the point to people, is that you and I are called not only to work in our families and to leave a legacy there, or to leave a legacy in our businesses, but we all have to step into roles, into community, however you define that, whether it is just Centurion, your local city that you live in, whether it's Gauteng as a province, whether it's South Africa, and dare I say it, I challenge most business owners. Every single one of us have the God-given ability to create influence globally. Every single one have the ability to influence globally. The problem is you and I are thinking far too small. And then lastly, and very importantly, is this concept about I have a duty, responsibility, God-given mandate to steward the wealth creation that I've been given, to be able to pass it on to the next generation. We come back to the concept of wealth generation and generation of wealth, where it's called to build wealth three generations behind you. And the moment you start asking yourself the question, have you built enough wealth to pass on to the next 2 generations, all of a sudden you get a huge fright and say, I've got to add a couple of zeros to my balance sheet or to my net asset value for that to be able to take place. And that's subject of an entirely different discussion, etc. But it all comes to the bottom line, as you've seen on the slide. It comes to how you and I are stewarding the opportunities and the resources available to us. Question mark I often ask business owners, if Pieter Scholtz at 31 December is the same person that he was at 1 January this year, I haven't stewarded the growth opportunities, the learning opportunities that I was given throughout the last 365 days. But the same applies to us in family. The same applies to us in the business. The same applies to us in our role and influence in communities to make communities a better place to work. And the same applies to us insofar as our wealth generation model is concerned. So as we look at that, the question then becomes, how have I stewarded, how have I built a business that buys me the time and the freedom to step out of it, to play the role in my family, to play the role in the business, to play the role in communities, and ultimately make sure that at the same time that I've provided the stewardship of the wealth opportunities that reside within me. And as we move to a close today, because I'd rather want us to engage further, the problem that I find with most of us is we're building shacks as opposed to building cathedrals. And if you think of it as follows, the architect, and this is the architect that designed this cathedral, knew full well that as he penned the plans or the design for this cathedral, knew full well that he wasn't going to be alive when the cathedral was going to be completed. And you and I both know in modern terms, cathedral in Barcelona, Spain was just completed probably 2-3 months ago. They started working on that cathedral something like 1885. So think of it when we think about our own calling in life, how big a business, how do we build a business that in actual fact runs without me, that allows me to go and play a role in the communities to which I've been called to serve. And we think of it like the architect that has designed this cathedral, and the plan was very well defined, but he knew full well that, number one, he didn't have the skills, he didn't have the resources, he didn't have the time, and this thing was so big, it will take way beyond his own lifetime for it to come to completion. My call to you and I is to what degree have you and I built businesses? To what degree have you and I built businesses that, and families, etc., that leave a legacy that transcends the time that you and I are on this earth. And the question mark then goes to play to say, if 80% of you, what you're working on today, goes underground the day you die, then you're into single generational thinking. Let me repeat that. If 80% of what you're working on today goes underground the day you die, then you're into single generational thinking. And so the very famous Dr. Miles Monroe wrote one day, said, no matter how much you say, no matter how much you may learn, earn, achieve, accumulate, or accomplish, if it all dies with you, then you are a generational failure. And I'm challenging every single one of us here today is to go and reflect on what our calling in life has been. How do we take that calling, reverse engineer that into say, how big a business and what scale and operating system do I need to put into the business to be able to give effect to the calling that I have in my life? Because you and I have got to create businesses that have a lasting legacy, plus allow me the time to play into those spaces to which I've been called to play, whether it's in church, whether it's in community, whether it's in sporting industry, whether it's in politics, whatever the case may be. That's your calling today. So, David, thank you very much. I think that's the key message that I wanted to get through today. I didn't necessarily want to get into death by PowerPoint today, but let's open up for any particular questions.
Wow, thank you so much, Peter. I mean, that was so powerful. And, when I look at myself, I realize that right now I'm building a shack and I need to change that to building a cathedral. And hopefully through this program that we're doing with Vision 2026, it will be a cathedral and will continue. So you're absolutely right. One has to put in systems and the procedures in place so that this can be continued if I'm hit by a bus tomorrow. Hopefully not, but that's the idea. Thank you, Peter. That was very, very powerful. I'm going to hand over to Mana, but before I do that, I'd just like to say, if you are on this program and you want to become a member of Vision 2026, please would you take a scan of that QR code, come and join us, and then you won't miss any of our sessions, and you'll also get feedback from the show itself every week. So please go and scan that. Also, please go and subscribe to our Facebook, our LinkedIn, and our YouTube channels where you can actually hear this program. And then lastly, if you want to be a member and you want to actually be a guest speaker on our show, please DM me on LinkedIn and let me have your details, and we can put you on the list to be a guest speaker sometime in the future. Thank you so much. Let's go over to Mana. Mana, I'm sure you've got a burning question for Peter.
Yeah, David gave me the task to talk about the hats, and that's something I'm very familiar with, because the transition, it reminded me of the transition from the corporate world into owning my own business. When I started my business, gone was the marketing team, gone was the accounting team, gone was the receptionist, gone was the person who just makes you a cup of coffee when you need one. So you become all that, and you have to decide which hat am I wearing today. And apart from that, I'm also a woman, a mother, and I was a nurse, I was a mother, I was a soccer mom, I was a rugby mom. So all those hats, it was like trying to keep all these balls in the air. So my question today, but in business, another important distinction, which you rightly said, is the difference between wearing a shareholder hat and an operator hat. So, Peter, you spoke about shareholder hat versus the operator hat. In your experience coaching business owners, what is the most common reason founders struggle to put the operator hat down, and what finally enables them to do just that?
Yeah, Mana, good question. And I recognize exactly your particular journey, and it's a challenging journey as well. I mean, a couple of things for me. One thing I always say is that I find that with many CEOs, they, and particularly in today's environment, they're chasing what I call the next bright shiny object. Okay. And that sucks up their time. And so Warren Buffett actually made the comment, if you follow Warren Buffett very well, he made the point one day, he said, most successful business owners say no to 99% of things and yes to 1% of things. And for me, the fundamental shift that every one of us have got to make is to ask ourselves the question, what am I saying no to in order for me to give priority to that which is important? Now, let me go back, and I did a talk about this in America 2024. The word priority was first formed in the 1400s, and it was always in the singular. It only changed to the multiple or the plural in around the early 20th century or 19th century, I beg your pardon, when it became priorities. So we've shifted from the singular focus about what's important to us that's going to move the business to the next level to trying to do everything to everybody. And so that's why when I say to business owners, and particularly women that have got multiple hats to wear, it's a real challenge, is what are you saying no to? Because I don't believe, hope you understand where I'm coming from, I don't believe in the concept of superwoman that can do everything. Somewhere the ball gets dropped. And that's not an indication on your own intelligence or ability. But like any of us, you've actually got to learn to say no to. And the question, I'll leave this with you as well, to say, when somebody says to me, Pete, here's my focus areas or my priorities for the next quarter or for the next 6 months, the next thing I say, show me your calendar, your diary. Because if I don't see it in your diary, it ain't going to happen. Okay.
That is a hard lesson I learned. Yeah. The next question I want to ask is more also related to where I had difficulty in my business was to, I know you need to surround you with people, and that's a hard lesson I learned, is to have people in your business that knows more than you do. So I'm lucky in that sense that I do have Andri in my life, and she does know more than I do in a sense, but there are certain things that they still need me to do. So I'm in a lucky position, but I think for some business owners, it's very hard to give away the power. What would be your advice be to step back and then let them be who they are and do what they can do best?
Yeah, great question again. The concept of handing over power. At the end of the day, every business owner's got a choice. Because if they wanted to retain power, guess what's happening? They're working a 20-hour day.
Yes.
And if you go back to the concept of buying your time and freedom, one of the first things I say to business owners, define for me what time freedom means for you. Well, Pete, and I've had this, Pete, I don't want to work 7 days a week anymore, 8 hours a day. Well, okay, what's got to change in order for that to happen? Well, I can't do all this work. How much of this work can you dedicate to somebody else outside? Okay. And so we then define what that looks like. Well, we first going to get you to a point where you're working Monday to Friday only. Therefore, the tasks that are keeping you so busy have got to be either automated, eliminated, or delegated. And if they're not prepared to do those, then that's your choice. Then suck at the game, excuse me saying so.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm there where I now need to teach Andri to let go of some of the stuff because I see myself in her right now. And she's getting there. I'm sure she's going to get there. But let's go over to...
If I may just make one further comment, you make a really important point. I always say to people when I ran my business still in South Africa is, I had a lady, Tracy, I think Glenn knew her, that worked in my business. And I say to her, do you want to speak to the boss? Or do you want to speak to somebody who knows what's going on here? Two different people.
Yes, absolutely.
2 different people. And we employ people for following reasons. We employ people to create leverage around my time. We create people to create leverage around skills that I don't have. And we create leverage around making sure that people have the demonstrated ability to solve increasingly complex problems, which I don't have the time or the skill set to do. But if 80% of the problems have to come through you, you're the biggest constraint to growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now that I think we've planted a seed in our business owners listening in to step back a little bit, and the team needs to learn how to operate in a reliable system. So Wilhelm, bring us the team performance perspective from your side?
Thank you very much, Marna. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And Peter, that was excellent, the whole presentation. There's a couple of things that catch my eye. And
Yeah.
yes, of course, you mention it again, and it's about the time and the freedom that one needs. And if you talk about a 20-hour day, there's no time for being a father for your kids, and that's maybe the big problem. I also focus over the years, I studied burnout, why people burn out, and what's the reason for all those things. And it's all about time. It's all about freedom, not having the freedom to live your purpose. And then we miss it. So business can be a burden, and it shouldn't be. But and the other thing that also catch my eye is the self-set leadership thing that you said. If you are just in it for yourself in business, it's actually a waste of time. You must leave a legacy. It must go further than you yourself. But okay, now let's get practical. I work with companies, and that's a big problem for leaders to give it over to their teams. And on the one side, it's a problem because people don't take responsibility. It's so much easier to ask the boss. He must decide. And as you've mentioned, clever people, engineers, clever people, they just have a battle to give it over and trust the rest of the team. But you mentioned something about the rhythm. There's a rhythm that you need to follow to get this thing, and the meetings and things. Explain a bit more, make it a bit more practical. How do we get the people to fall into that rhythm and to keep continuing it if you are not there as a leader or as a business owner or CEO? And how do we really give it over? Be practical about that.
No, okay. So let me get practical about that. How do you get people to do that? Firstly, as a CEO, you make a decision. Here's the system. Here's how the system's going to operate. This is the chairperson of that particular meeting. That's the outcome of that particular meeting. So one of the things that I find is a gap around the world, and in particular in South Africa, and I won't necessarily get into too much of the detail. One of the key things we lack in this country is leadership. People that have got the backbone to make decisions and dictate, I don't use the word dictate lightly, but determine what needs to happen in the business for this to happen. So the meeting rhythm for me fundamentally becomes, number one, is that are you having a monthly management meeting with yourself and your management team? We're reviewing past performance and reviewing future for next month's direction for the business. Okay. Number two is that are you having a weekly meeting, or depending upon the size of the business, but is each department having a weekly, what we call L10 meeting, leadership meeting every single week, an hour and a half, etc., that reviews past performance and actually fact looks at ideas, problems, and opportunities to solve in the week going forward. And you've got to define what the structure of those meetings look like. Built down to the next level is that I'm fundamentally of the opinion that every single leader should be meeting with their individual team members at very worst once every second week, but ideally once a week for 30 minutes. Clearly defined agenda. Just have a look at your KPIs. So understand where the gaps are and what is it that you're working on, what boulders, what opportunities, what obstacles do you need me to help you with in order for you to be effective in the role going forward. And then ultimately for me as well, it goes back to the concept that, one of the things we work with business owners about both locally and globally is that a quarterly planning meeting of at least 2 days, or at very least 1 day, where you review past performance for the past quarter and you define the strategy and priorities for the next quarter, having defined what the goal and strategy for the year is. So once a quarter is a full day meeting, review everything in the business, determine and reset the target for the next quarter. Once a month, you've got to have a look at the financials and have a financial management meeting together with the review of the business as a whole. Once a week, every team leader or team manager runs a meeting with their team and review what's going on in their department. And then for every team member, team leader, to manage and have a individual meeting with every team leader, ideally 30 minutes a week, okay, if not 30 minutes, once every 2 weeks. One of the things I found working in the USA, and then I think South Africa, and I might be wrong in saying this, you've still got to learn. In America, 99% of the meetings don't last longer than 30 minutes. In South Africa, our meetings last an hour and a half. Okay, then you go and apply Parkinson's laws that you say to yourself, the time you give yourself to complete a task is the time you will take to complete the task. If you say to yourself, you've got 15 minutes, and I've got 2 15-minute meetings tonight. I've got 15 minutes meeting with Glenn, for argument's sake, to discuss this and make a decision. You'll make a decision in 15 minutes because that's all you got. So don't let business owners come and tell me that there isn't time.
Yes.
So we steward time and resources as well. Time is one of our biggest stewarding opportunities.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Yes, I always ask leaders, will you sit in your own meeting?
Yeah.
Because sometimes meetings are so freaking boring, and so it's and at the end of the day, when they walk out of the meeting, there was no decision made. But okay, that's another topic. So that's important. Thank you for that. And yes, let's move on to the next person, David.
Thank you, Wilhelm. Well, I've got just one quick question for you, Peter, and that is, and I'm looking at, sometimes the face of the business is a person. Now, if I look at, for example, in my view, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the face of his businesses. Now, what happens when Elon Musk is no longer there? How does a company actually transform that? Because I don't see anyone else, but I only see Elon Musk in his business. So the question that I have is, how does a company who understands that's the situation transform from that in a positive way?
Well, I think it's an interesting one. You say a face of the business is the person. I think we're going to separate the business from the brand and the personality. Elon Musk might have a personality, whether you like him or not. But I can tell you right now, if you go and dig deeper behind that, there are teams of people that are actually, in fact, running the business on his behalf. You go back to the story of even Richard Branson, dyslexic. He can't read financials at all, yet he built multiple businesses. Okay. But he's got teams of really capable A-grade people actually running his businesses in the background. But when we look at Virgin Group, we think of Richard Branson. But the brains behind the business is not Richard Branson. The vision behind the business is Richard Branson. The vision behind Tesla is Elon Musk. But the brains behind actually making that stuff work most often is hundreds of engineers and financial people behind the system that build the engine, build the product, build the service at a profitable rate for the firm going forward, etc. Not Elon Musk and not Richard Branson.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Willie, and then we'll go to Glenn.
Yes, thank you, Peter. While I was listening to you, I said to myself, I wish still South Africa's business people could listen to this like synopsis of what is so important for business. Thank you for this. I recently visited China like a month ago, and what I saw there is everything is working because there tends to be quite more like a priority we culture and less than an I culture. And China got it right to alleviate 800 million people from poverty over a 40-year period. How did they get that right? And I think it resonates to a lot of things you said this morning. But coming back to the trust things, and you mentioned it, I think trust is so important. But trust, we develop trust. It's not just it's there. We develop trust. And now in this world of AI, and this is the question, is that if you now tomorrow discover that most of my communication with my clients are AI driven, what will be the trust factor there? What is your view?
Yeah, interesting. I just did a talk, and I think Glenn was aware of it. I just did a talk at a recent leadership conference that I ran, and I chose to talk about AI and the human edge. I think to answer the question for you, Willie, going forward, in 1979, somebody in IBM wrote a statement that said a computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, computers should never be allowed to make decisions. So in summary, my concept is, and we use AI hugely in America at the moment, and I think South Africa have got a real rude awakening. If I see the businesses I operate with in South Africa, I think everybody's put their head in their sands, generally speaking, with regards to this thing in South Africa. And the level of development that's happening in AI globally is just running at a pace that is scary. But here's the point I want to put, I want to try and answer your question, Billy, is that you need to use AI to help you automate tasks and to help you get work out. But your role as the human edge on top of AI can never be replaced. Okay? Because goes back, as I said at that talk, and I'm saying to you today, is that a computer can never be held accountable. If I, for instance, have developed, like I did last night, developed a financial model for one of my large clients in San Francisco yesterday, and as I always do, financial model developed through AI, okay, and spent half an hour, 45 minutes working through the model, double checking it, found 4 errors in the process. Now, if I had gone and just taken that document, pushed it off to the clients, guess who would have been held accountable? Me, not Claude. And so our role on top of AI is to take that which it gives me, to apply my own human wisdom, and we know where our source of wisdom comes from, to apply my own wisdom and context on top of that and make the recommended change that before I pass it on to a client at the end of the day. And so my concept, to answer your question probably more directly, is never trust AI. Never trust AI. It's a massive tool. The amount of work I'm putting through the system right now is probably 5 times more productive per day, per week, than I've ever been in January this year. But I cannot abdicate my wisdom, my thinking purely to AI. That role will never be taken away from us. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank you. And it's such an important answer because, that is right where we are currently in South Africa. It's the speed, and the speed of AI, makes our lives speed up, and then very importantly, what you said earlier, and that's stuck with me as well this morning, is what do you say no to? Because the whole AI thing is speed up our lives so quickly. Yeah, thank you. I want to hand over to Glenn. Glenn, technology changed what we can do, as you know, and character determines how we use it. So, Glenn, that takes us from technology to purpose and legacy.
Thanks very much, Willie. Appreciate that. Peter, once again, you've just done outstanding. When you were answering, I was just thinking when you were answering Willem's question, you literally mapped out a whole business plan, literally, in answering that question. It was really brilliant. Thank you very much for that. My first question is really about, there's business profit and there's also generational wealth. We've discussed it. You've spoken about this. My question is really, how should a business owner think about the relationship between business profit and building generational wealth?
Yeah, great question. Let me answer for you. Simply put, the sources of our wealth are threefold. The salary I pay myself monthly as a CEO, the dividends I take out of the business quarterly, half annually, or half yearly, or annually, and the sale of the business upon exit. 80% of your wealth is generated upon the sale of the exit. And so that's an entirely different thing. So one of the things I'll keep on saying to business owners, and I'm going to come back to your profit debate now, is that how many of us actually know what my current personal net asset value is? Less than 5% of people. How many of us know what the net asset value of my business is? Probably 30, 40%. Whether it's correct or not is a different debate. But then the question becomes is, when you look at profit, the purpose of profit is, number one, and I always make the following equation. I said a third of the profit goes to you as dividends, and I'll come back to that now. A third of that goes to generating cash reserves in the business, to have a between 3 to 6 months cash reserve in a separate money market account in the business out of the operating account, and a third of that goes to reinvestment into the business. I've just recently built an AI tool that helps business owners fundamentally be able to do scenario planning around the enterprise value, looking at their dividend declarations, and how taking, let's assume they can decide whether they take a third of their dividends to pay out as the third of their profit to pay out as dividends, or anything up to say 75% of the profit to pay out as dividends, provided they've got cash reserves in the business, what tax impact that it has, and assuming that they invest 80% of those dividends into investments, that's how they build the wealth.
Absolutely.
And that's how they use the dividends for you to live what you've been called to do. So remember, the business is a vehicle for you to fund through time and financial resources, whatever it is you've been called to do. So people often say to me, Pete, but profit is a swear word, and it's biblically there's a challenge with it. The Bible talks more about profit and money than it talks about the word love.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got to understand that we have been asked to steward the resources at our disposal in the business in order for us to generate the reward for properly stewarding time, people, financial resources, and products, in order for us to live out the calling for which we've been called to. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant. Kingdom business.
Yeah.
All right. My next question. And let's talk next generation leaders, because I often focus on that myself as well. The next generation who actually then inherits that wealth. It's all fine and well inheriting that wealth, but how do you propose to get the next generation to have the right values, the discipline, and purpose to steward that wealth?
Well, yeah, that's subject of a long discussion as well, Glenn, but great question. The first legacy we build is not financial legacy. The first legacy we build is the transference of the character and the values and the attributes that hopefully I have onto my 3 beautiful daughters. And I remember saying to my daughters a couple of months back, I said to them, number one, let's go back to my great-grandfather and my wife's great-grandfather. We privileged and blessed to have come down a lineage on both our sides of the family that have espoused a certain set of values consistently through our generations.
Absolutely.
And my job is to make sure those values are transferred to my daughters, that one day when I'm not here, the best thing that can ever happen to me is that somebody will say, there goes Pieter Scholtz's and Hanneke Scholtz's daughters.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
Okay. And I said to my kids, you have a duty and a responsibility in your early careers to ensure that lineage is not broken. It is a responsibility on your shoulders now already. Am I perfect? By no stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
Have I made lots of mistakes? Yes. Am I trying to deal with some of them still? Yes. But the character and skills is something that I've got to make sure I owe it to my parents, my forefathers, my wife's forefathers, and make sure that that's transferred through. That's dealing with the character and the skill and the values transfer. When it comes to financial welfare, I remember chatting to a bloke by the name of Andre Steiger here in South Africa, he's head of Crown Ministries, and we were chatting, and he does a lot of work in estate planning. And he made the comment, he said, I've got 3 daughters, and it replicated with me. I've got 3 daughters. He said, one daughter cannot give the money away quicker to disadvantaged people. The other daughter is a great steward of money and saves and invests the money. And my third daughter doesn't have a money problem except for the last 30 days of the month. Now, as you write the estate plan, as you write your living estate plan for your kids, you determine in what legal format your legacy is left to the next person. He made the comment to me one day. He said, "Peter, I was writing an estate plan for a client whose one son was a drug addict." Now, the worst thing you do to a drug addict is leave him with 10 million rand cash.
Exactly.
Because you sentence him to death. So what structure you put into place to give him the equal value with the necessary protections is the critical discussion you need to have. And for that, you need specialist attorneys, estate planners to help you structure that. I hope I've answered that question for you.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah, well done. Thank you very much, Peter. All right, back to you, David.
Yeah, this has been a masterclass in itself. Thank you so much, Peter, and thanks for all these fantastic questions. I want to say, well, Peter, time is of the essence here. We want to finish by 9. We normally try and finish by 1:45, but 9 is our target. So what I want to do is go around the room and just ask each of our co-hosts what their big takeaway is, and what are they going to put into action from what they've learned from you today. And I'm going to start with Mana.
Yeah, I think we were, and Peter basically touched on it just now, is when we speak about wealth and legacy we are building, there's a more important personal question behind it for me, is what legacy would you like to leave for your children?
Yeah.
Will they remember the business that you build or the person you were while you were building it?
Yeah.
What memories have you built into your life? Sharing with your children, you can see the coffin going, and they think, "Oh yes, I'm here to build a great business." But where were your children while you were building this business? I think that's my biggest takeaway. We should not forget the memories you leave behind.
Love that.
Thank you, Mona. Let's go to Willie Snyman.
Yeah, just quickly, I think definitely one thing, trust is still the one thing that technology cannot automate.
Yeah.
And maybe from an action point of view, have one conversation you've been postponing, Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great stuff.
Let's go to Wilhelm.
Yeah, I think that 1%, focus on the 1% thing that actually is the thing. And
it's going to move the needle.
That will move the needle. And with that, the word responsibility. I must take responsibility for my own life and my legacy. So what am I going to do about it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you, Glenn. And let's go to Glenn. Glenn?
Thanks, David. There were 2 things that I jotted down that I think are really important for me and that just made sense. Business must serve you. I think that's so important. And are you the biggest constraint to growth? Wow.
Yep.
Good question, that. And then just to leave a statement, a successful business creates income. A significant business creates influence that lasts beyond its founder. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, what you've discussed. And I just loved it. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks, Glenn.
And Peter, before we go to you for the last pearl of wisdom, I just want to say, from me, my biggest takeaway is, first of all, the 2 hats, but more so, am I building a hat or a hut? Not a hut or a cathedral? And that's something I really need to look at in my business. So thank you for that. Peter, what can you leave our audience with, and what is your biggest takeaway from today?
Yeah, thank you very much. My takeaway is obviously the wisdom in the room. So thanks so much for that. There's lots of wisdom in this room here, and thank you for everyone's contributions and great questions. I'm going to come back to the concept that I think that go back to the shack versus cathedral debate. Go back to the debate around the responsibility of the family. You and I, there's not one person in this room that doesn't want to see South Africa succeed. Stop worrying about what the politicians are doing or not doing. Fix up your family first. That which you and I can control, and the rest will look after itself.
Wow. Thank you so much, Peter. So please join us next week. We will be having Caroline Vanque. She'll be talking about how African entrepreneurs can turn fragmented operations into investable, technology-enabled ecosystems. So come and join us for that. It's going to be a very fascinating week. But on top of that, today we're going to create a newsletter from what Peter has discussed with us. We'll be sharing that. And we'll also be sharing our key takeaways in a post tomorrow. So thank you very much. Please contact Peter. He's on LinkedIn if you would like to get hold of him. Peter, how do people get hold of you if they wish to ask you further questions? Or
I think, David, obviously I didn't put something like that on the slide. I wasn't quite sure of the format, but they can either email me at peter.scholtz@wol.co.za. They can either get hold of me via LinkedIn. It's probably the best route to go, and obviously I'll keep active line on that. So drop me a personal mail or direct mail on LinkedIn, and I'll get in contact with them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you very much to our co-hosts, and especially to our audience. I see the number of comments, and I will ask Peter to go through and just answer each one of those comments that have come through. Thank you very much. Well, blessings to all of you. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next Thursday. Looking forward to it. Cheerio for now. Bye for now. Bye.
Thank you.
Welcome to Vision 2026. We give expertise a voice. A platform where bold ideas, lived expertise, and real experience shape how we grow, lead, and create impact in 2026 and beyond. Meet your host, David Bauer, bid architect and strategic thinker, who helps leaders turn complexity into clarity and gives business leaders a voice that wins in the real world. Marna Rowitz, seasoned strategist and business leader, helping people protect what they've built and grow with clarity, resilience, and foresight. Glenn Lease Jones, Map 4 Life coach with decades of experience guiding people and entrepreneurs to find purpose, set direction, and map their journey to meaningful success. Russell John Fagan, sales mastery trainer, who brings practical sales insight and transformational strategies that help individuals and businesses increase their influence and performance. Wilhelm Lombard, human systems and team performance coach focused on helping organizations strengthen team alignment, leadership energy, and human systems so people are ready for growth before growth exposes weaknesses. Together, we bring unique perspectives and deep expertise so you can think bigger, act bolder, and make 2026 your breakthrough year. Hit that subscribe button now and follow Vision 2026 for your weekly dose of expert insight, future-focused conversations, and real-world perspectives shaping South Africa. This is Vision 2026, giving expertise a voice.